My stepmom treated my daughter like a doll at Disney World but completely ignored my son, ruining our trip. I decided to cut contact, and now she's upset because I'm expecting another girl. My dad, 32F, has been married to Sasha, a pseudonym, in her 40s, for nearly a decade. Since I was already an adult when they got together, I never formed a close relationship with her. Although Sasha has always been kind and thoughtful, her behavior can be a bit much at times, but I never had any major issues with her. I'm now married, 34M, with 2 kids. My son is 9, and my daughter is 4. Sasha adores my children, especially my daughter, which became overwhelming quickly, leading us to set some boundaries. She respected those boundaries until our recent trip. In January, my dad and Sasha invited us to join them for a Disney World trip to celebrate my son's 9th birthday. I quickly regretted the decision. Sasha lavished attention on my daughter, crossing almost every boundary we had established. For instance, she bought a matching mini-ear tiara for my daughter, despite my daughter preferring a Donald Duck hat, which I bought instead. Sasha insisted on getting the tiara anyway, upset when my daughter refused to wear it. During the trip, my dad and Sasha went shopping between park visits, despite me asking them not to buy anything for the kids since we still had shopping planned. Sasha came back with 5 bags of clothes for my daughter and 2 for my son, saying she couldn't resist. My daughter wanted a Belle costume to wear at the parks, but Sasha tried to persuade us to get her an Ariel costume instead, even though my daughter is terrified of Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Sasha took countless photos with my daughter in front of the Magic Kingdom castle, but only a handful with my son. She kept suggesting we take our daughter to Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, and when we refused due to the outrageous prices she offered to pay, we declined, and I later learned she attempted to make a reservation anyway, but there was no availability. At Slinky Dog Dash, my daughter's first roller coaster, Sasha insisted on sitting next to her. My daughter wanted to sit with me, so we switched seats. This pattern continued at other attractions, where Sasha attempted to get my daughter to sit on her lap or picked her up while meeting characters. The breaking point came on the last day at Magic Kingdom. My husband had a minor injury, and while I took him to the first aid station, my dad and Sasha offered to take the kids on the Peter Pan ride. However, they suggested the Little Mermaid ride instead, falsely assuring my kids that Ursula wouldn't be present. My daughter was left sobbing and clinging to her brother when we reunited. After returning home, I informed my dad that we wouldn't be taking our kids on trips with Sasha again due to her behavior. He was furious, claiming that Sasha had devoted so much thought to my kids during the trip and that we should be grateful for her presence in our lives. I lost my cool, calling Sasha a creep and stating that they should appreciate that I was still okay with them seeing my kids after everything that had happened. This led to a huge argument. It's been weeks since we got back, and my dad is still upset with me and my husband. Sasha has texted a few times, apologizing if she made me uncomfortable. She insists that she loves my kids and hopes to spend more time with them. While I don't believe I'm in the wrong, I wonder if I overreacted. Part of me thinks that Sasha's actions came from a place of love and good intentions. Some commenters suggested I consider Sasha's motivations. She doesn't have children of her own, and my dad has always been open about not wanting more kids, so I assume she doesn't either. She often refers to herself as Aunt Sasha and commented that she was too young to be a grandma when I was pregnant with my son. An insightful comment pointed out that my son doesn't seem to like Sasha, possibly sensing her favoritism toward my daughter. He's very protective of her, which may explain his discomfort. Update March 4, 2024. After reflecting on the feedback, I realized that, although Sasha's behavior upset me, calling her a creep was not the right response. However, I still believe it's best for my family to maintain some distance from her for now. Our previous decision to avoid future trips with Sasha remains the right course of action. Sasha's tendency to override my and my husband's parenting, along with her clear favoritism toward my daughter, has been more pronounced since my daughter was born. After the boundary conversation I had with my dad and Sasha, I noticed Sasha began to focus exclusively on my daughter while largely neglecting my son. Sasha once told us she had always wondered what it would be like to have a daughter. Previously, she had identified as child-free, which left me confused about her feelings. Nevertheless, this gave my husband and me a sense of reassurance that we were setting the right boundaries for our kids. Until the Disney trip, those boundaries had never been crossed. Many of you suggested that she might have gotten carried away or that the excitement of Disney inspired her to ensure my kids had a fantastic experience. However, I firmly believe that no matter her intentions, she completely disregarded our boundaries. When we initially set those limits, we made it clear that overstepping them would have consequences. The thrill of being at Disney doesn't justify making exceptions. Moreover, it wasn't about ensuring my children enjoyed their trip. Sasha seemed more interested in living out her own fantasy of what a Disney experience should look like. She consistently dismissed my children's preferences in favor of her own desires, even when they expressed what they wanted and didn't want. This favoritism towards my daughter, especially during my son's birthday, made my daughter uncomfortable, which only added to my frustration. I'm still not over what happened with the Little Mermaid ride. My daughter is shy and takes time to warm up to people, so knowing that her trust was compromised in that moment infuriates me. To be clear, my children are not toys, and anyone who treats them as such will definitely face consequences. I reached out to my father and Sasha on Saturday. I apologized for calling Sasha a creep, but I emphasized that we need some time apart. They won't see my family until my younger sister's birthday in late April. If that goes well, we might invite them to my daughter's 5th birthday party in May. I also warned them that if they crossed our boundaries again, the consequences would be even more severe. My father didn't take it well, but I honestly don't care. Sasha texted me, apologizing again and asking if she could at least FaceTime the kids occasionally. I declined. As for those who suggested that my controlling behavior ruined the trip, I want to clarify that my kids had an amazing time at Disney World. They're still talking about it. My daughter is eager to display her pictures with the characters, and my son claimed it was the best birthday ever. I want to express my gratitude for all the advice and support on my initial post. Canyon Moon, you did the right thing by protecting your children. That's the most important thing. I'm glad they're still excited about the trip despite the favoritism and the Ursula animatronic incident. You and your husband managed to create wonderful memories that overshadowed the negatives. For the potential reconciliation, it might be good to set the stage for normalcy during your younger sister's birthday in late April, especially since everyone will be aware of that timeline. It's really about their behavior over time. If they keep messaging you for FaceTime calls and insist you're being unreasonable, even after you've clearly stated your need for no contact, consider keeping a tally of their requests. Each time they ask, give them a point, and after a certain number, extend their timeout because they clearly don't understand boundaries yet. OP, that's solid advice. While we're hesitant about seeing them, we'll definitely take action if our boundaries are disrespected. Given my father's personality, I doubt a tally would go over well. I'm trying to avoid escalating this into a bigger conflict, but it might be something to consider. I'll discuss it with my husband. Scarlett Mae West, thanks for the update. You're making the right choices, and it's good that you're prepared for any attempts your father and Sasha might make to push against your boundaries. Make sure anyone who could take their side understands the consequences of intervening or trying to mediate. OP, thankfully, no one is taking their side. My sister only mentioned that I'd been a bit harsh with them. Update 2, May 3, 2024. In my last post, I mentioned that my father and Sasha wouldn't see the kids until my younger sister's birthday party, which happened last weekend. We chose not to attend. While these 2 months of no contact worked reasonably well, they weren't perfect. To my surprise, my father respected my wishes, but Sasha kept trying to connect with the kids. She would call me under the pretense of needing to ask something, only to slip in, "Are the kids around? I want to say hi." Each time, I reminded her of the conversation we had back in March. This happened nearly a dozen times, which prompted my husband and me to seriously consider skipping the party. After talking with our kids, we decided against attending. They both expressed that they missed their grandfather but clearly didn't want to see Sasha. We even contemplated going and keeping the kids away from her, but we ultimately decided that risking their discomfort wasn't worth it. My son even suggested we could see their aunt in another setting, free of Sasha. We explained the situation to my sister, who was understandably upset, mostly because she hadn't seen the kids in a while. We went out to dinner at her favorite restaurant the day after the party. I also called my father to let him know we wouldn't be attending the birthday celebration. He reacted better than I anticipated, but we still had a brief argument about it. He insisted I promised we'd let Sasha see the kids after 2 months, called me unfair, and claimed he had the right to maintain a relationship with his grandchildren. I quickly denied that, trying to soften the blow at first, but I eventually told him the truth. my kids don't want to see his wife, and I refuse to force them. We had a long discussion where I shared how upset Sasha's actions during the Disney trip had made my children and how uncomfortable both my husband and I felt. I confessed that I don't trust his wife at all and probably never will. He maintained that he thought I was overreacting, but he understood my desire to protect my kids. My dad mentioned how the 2 months of no contact affected them. Apparently, Sasha began talking about my kids, particularly my daughter, far more than usual. She'd suggested activities and places she thought they'd enjoy. My father knew about one of her calls to me but believed it was an isolated incident. She even expressed her wish to give my daughter a gift at my sister's birthday party. At one point, she told him she wanted to organize another family vacation with the kids, despite my clear communication that they wouldn't be traveling with her again. Hearing all of this only reinforced my conviction that I can't trust her around my children. For now, I plan to maintain limited contact with my father and keep no contact with Sasha. My daughter mentioned wanting her grandpa at her upcoming birthday party, so I extended an invitation to him, but made it clear that Sasha wasn't welcome. He agreed. Honestly, I'm wary of my father after everything that's transpired. I'm allowing him to attend because the party will be at my home, which makes it easier for me to manage. If he tries to bring Sasha along, they'll both be asked to leave, and it will take a long time for me to consider letting him near my kids again. My father hasn't shared how Sasha is reacting to this. My sister informed me that during her party, Sasha asked her to relay that she wanted to talk to me. I have no intention of reaching out to her, nor do I plan to respond if she tries to contact me. My husband and I have both blocked her. My children are doing wonderfully, they often reminisce about the fun we had at Disney. My daughter has even been saving coins in her piggy bank for our next trip. On a completely different note, I recently found out I'm pregnant again. This was entirely unplanned. I've always said I wanted a maximum of 2 kids, with a third being an unlikely accident, but my husband and I are thrilled. I'm still in my first trimester, so not many people know yet. We're brainstorming ways to share the news with our kids. Overall, I'm content with my life right now. While I wish the situation with Sasha had never happened, I feel like it has made me a better parent. I've never felt more confident in my ability to protect my children than I do now. I don't think I'll be updating again anytime soon. Thank you once more for all the support you've provided. I wish you all the best. Edit, I appreciate all your insights, but I'd like to clarify why I won't change my stance on this matter. Firstly, I'm not worried about avoiding too many family events. My paternal family is smaller than my maternal side, and we don't have many gatherings in general. The only reason my dad attended my sister's birthday party was that she wanted to introduce her boyfriend to him. He has seen my children numerous times without Sasha, so that's not a concern either. I don't harbor any dislike for Sasha. Even if I did, I'm careful not to let my feelings about others affect my children. I strive to teach them to be polite. However, my kids are allowed to express their feelings. If they don't like someone, they shouldn't have to be around that person, regardless of how much that individual wants to see them. I refuse to teach my children to sacrifice their comfort for someone who doesn't truly care about them. And honestly, Sasha doesn't care about my kids. She has not made any effort to build a relationship with them. Instead, she tries to push them, especially my daughter, to engage in activities that serve her interests. Most of her actions during the Disney trip were not for my daughter's benefit but for her own. Sasha is not a grandmother to my children. They don't see her that way, and she doesn't wish to be seen as one. She prefers to call herself aunt. Her actions are not those of a caring relative, they reflect a desire to treat my daughter like a doll while ignoring my son. If someone makes one of my children feel overwhelmed and disregards the other on his birthday, they don't belong around my kids. To address another part of your question, I have spoken to Sasha. The conversation about boundaries was precisely about this issue. I expressed what was wrong and how she could improve. Whenever I try to set boundaries, Sasha disregards them. It's not my responsibility to teach her how to form a relationship with my children any more than I already have. That's the essence of my no-contact policy. Sasha doesn't listen to me or my children. If my kids were indifferent, I might consider a different approach, but they're not, and I refuse to force them into a situation where they feel disrespected. Her insistence on pushing her fantasies onto my daughter is enough for me to maintain no contact. I have no plans to update again soon, nor am I seeking any further advice. Thank you for your concern. Update 3, new update September 3, 2024. To begin with, my father didn't bring Sasha to my daughter's birthday party back in May. I didn't really think he would. I made it clear I wouldn't tolerate that. Still, I'd be lying if I said your comments didn't make me a bit paranoid. On another note, I've just entered my 3rd trimester, and the baby is due in November. The kids are thrilled we're having another girl, but my husband and I have decided not to reveal the sex until she's born. This decision has nothing to do with our families. It's just a tradition we've followed with our first two. Everyone, including Sasha, knows about my pregnancy since we announced it a couple of months ago. I didn't mind my father telling her, though he did ask for permission first. I didn't hear much about her reaction, but according to him, she was happy for me. My kids still don't want to see Sasha, and I'm not forcing them to. I've unblocked her and muted her messages, but she hasn't tried to reach out. We continue to meet my father without his wife, and it's been working out. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's definitely improved since earlier this year. Last week, I encountered Sasha for the first time in months. My cousin hosted a party, and my husband and I attended, along with my father and Sasha. I knew she would be there, but since the kids weren't with us, my son had a sleepover, and my daughter was with my mom, I didn't mind seeing her. They arrived sometime after we did. My husband and I chatted with them for a few minutes, and it was less awkward than I had anticipated. Sasha asked about the baby's sex, and I reiterated that we weren't sharing it with anyone, which is something we've always done. About 20 minutes later, my father mentioned they had to leave. I thought it was odd that they were departing so soon, but I brushed it off. A few days later, my father called me, and we had a long conversation. Talking to him can be challenging, but here's what I gathered. They left early because Sasha was fighting back tears after seeing me. She was crying by the time they reached the car. They had a discussion afterward, and Sasha confessed she wanted kids. She married my dad knowing he didn't want any, but she hoped he would change his mind. Apparently, when my son was born, Sasha tried to drop hints to my father, but he didn't catch on, so she eventually gave up. According to him, she claimed to love my kids equally, but my daughter was special to her because she always envisioned herself as a girl mom. This mindset was part of why she became such an overwhelming presence when my daughter was a baby. When my husband and I began setting boundaries, Sasha realized she was overstepping and agreed to respect them. To her credit, she did a fairly good job back then, but my son still noticed the favoritism. The trip to Disney World was a turning point for Sasha because her dream of having a daughter involved taking her to places she loved as a child. She told my father that having my daughter there excited her to the point of forgetting everything I had said about respecting boundaries. Sasha envisioned a mother-daughter trip and tried to use my child to fulfill that fantasy. Although she later expressed regret for her actions during the trip, it seemed more about losing access to my children and feeling overwhelmed seeing me pregnant and looking good, at least according to my father. I'm not sure if that was what truly pushed her over the edge. I remember reading some comments speculating about this, but I didn't really expect it. My father said he was sharing this information because his wife wasn't doing well and he'd understand if I wanted to keep my kids away from her. I didn't expect that either. I'm not sure what the future holds for their relationship, and I don't think my father does either. What I do know is that if Sasha still desires children, it likely won't be with my father. Before this conversation, I had been contemplating my third child's future in relation to Sasha. Now, I sincerely don't want her involved in my baby's life. While this isn't a final decision, I've discussed it with my husband, and he agrees. I don't believe she's a bad person, and I've received some baby stealer comments in response to my previous update, but I don't think that's the case either. However, the Disney trip showed me that Sasha can be incredibly selfish and disrespectful when it comes to getting what she wants, even if it involves my kids. A couple of months ago, my husband and I talked to our son about Sasha. He expressed that he dislikes her for 2 reasons. She favors his sister, and she doesn't listen to them. Honestly, that's all the insight I need. Reflecting on my own childhood, I realize I was never allowed to establish boundaries. I was always expected to prioritize others over myself. It's essential to me that my children don't have to experience that. If they don't want to see Sasha, they shouldn't have to. That's all I wanted to share. I'm doing well, I recently received some great news at work, and my kids are thriving. I'm excited to meet my third baby. Thank you all once again for your support. Commenter, NTA, what a roller coaster. This is my first time reading any of this, and wow, you did a great job shutting that down while still being respectful. I admire the class you showed in handling it all, even with that slip where you called her a creep. It was accurate at the time. She was acting very creepy. Opie, I still think I shouldn't have said it, but the more I reflect on it, the more I feel like I had to. Honestly, when my dad told me she'd been thinking about what my kids would like the whole time, all I could remember was every moment she tried to force them to do things they clearly didn't want to do. The fact that she mentioned my daughter regarding the Ursula animatronic, which she knew was in the ride just days before, didn't help either. Commenter, for what it's worth, you might want to give your dad a heads up shortly before you announce your daughter's birth. If Sasha is this infatuated with being a girl mom and is this distraught over your pregnancy, he might want to be prepared for her reaction when she finds out you're having another girl. OP, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about how she'll react. With our first two, we didn't announce anything until we brought them home. My father mentioned he plans to visit us at the hospital without Sasha, so he'll find out beforehand anyway, but I'll definitely talk to him about it more in November. Commenter, has she ever considered being a foster parent? I know it's not the same as having her own kids, but maybe your dad would be open to that idea. OP, I don't know if she's thought about it, but I do know my father wouldn't want that either. He's been saying he's done raising kids since I was a teenager.